Talk Politics with Senator John Boozman is brought to you by the Arkansas State Chamber of Commerce and Associated Industries of Arkansas, because business matters. Impact Management Group, Public Relations and Public Affairs, over a decade of issue advocacy success. Connect Arkansas, empowering entrepreneurs and Arkansans through greater utilization of the Internet. And ConwayArkansas.org. Get smart. Visit ConwayArkansas.org and see why Conway is the smart choice for business, education, and more.
Well, I'm Roby Brock. Welcome to this latest edition of Talk Politics, our question and answer session with your elected officials. We are with U.S. Senator John Boozman today. He was elected in November of 2010. Now, this is your chance to ask questions of Senator Boozman. We've got some already in queue. If you want to add some during the show, send them through your Twitter account or through your Facebook account, and make sure you use the Talk Politics hashtag. That's going to bring it up to the top for our crackerjack technical team over here there to bring it to my attention. Senator, thank you so much for being here. It's good to see you.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I want to compliment you on the forum and doing these kind of things. This really is important to try and help people understand what's going on in the world we live in.
Well, I appreciate you being here, and we haven't seen each other since the Peabody debate, I think, and had a very long sit-down discussion, so it's good to see you. Let's start first with your Heifer trip today. You visited the Heifer International headquarters. Were you there, were they seeking some assistance from you, or are you there just learning a little bit more about their operations?
No, a couple things. I've been really active on the Hunger Caucus in Congress. I was a co-chair in the House, very active in the Senate. And they do a tremendous job. Heifer is something that we can be very, very proud of as a state. But also they have a model where you're not just giving things to people. Certainly there's times when you need to do that. But their model is such that they really teach people how to be productive, how to actually get their own food in the future. And as a result, just do a tremendous job.
Yeah, what did you do today when you were over there? Did you take a tour of their facilities? Did they show you some background of some
Well,
things?
we toured their facilities, which again, we can be very proud of. It really is a model of taking the latest green technology, and it's technology that is not just done, so you can say you're doing the technology. They have very strict things that they adhere to, that it has to cash flow within a certain period of time. So it's things that really work. And so they showed me all of that, and then we sat down and just really kind of updated me on what they were doing now, what their plans were in the future, and seeing how we could help connect them to different people to try and get those things done.
All right, let's take our first question here. It's from Jay in Little Rock. He says that Warren Buffett said in an interview today that he thinks that tax rates on super wealthy people ought to be increased. He mentioned that Buffett said he only pays a 15% tax rate, while most people in his office pay 33 to 41%. Spare the millionaires, but why not push tax rates up on billionaires is the question.
Well, I think, what we've been hearing is increasing the taxes on individuals that make $200,000 as an individual, $250,000 as a couple. That's hardly a billionaire. Most of those people that file in that group, I think 50-60% of them are actually small business. I'm an optometrist, an eye doctor, and so we used to do that at the clinic. We would file as a normal person, essentially, use those because you got a better tax break. So, I think most economists now don't feel like this is the time to raise taxes. I do think that we've got a great opportunity right now to actually look at the tax code, make it fair, make it simple, and there's really talk of getting rid of some of the loopholes and actually reducing taxes on our corporations to make them more competitive overseas. When you don't have the loophole for your particular entity, you wind up paying, I think we're second only to Japan as far as actually paying taxes at the corporate level. So we need to make it where our businesses are more competitive. But I think that's how you do it, is get rid of the loopholes. And the good news is there's lots of talk about doing that.
I don't know too many billionaire optometrists, so do you?
No.
Not billionaires.
I don't know many.
Okay. But maybe a little bit more to Jay's point, though. If there could be some comprehensive tax reform and there was a way to raise taxes on those that make $1 billion or more a year, would you be in favor of something that would seem more fair like that?
Well, I'm in favor of looking at anything. Right now everything's on the table. The reality is that's not where the money's at. These are all when you talk about taxing these different things, the corporate jet tax, that they did accelerated depreciations and things. Fine, that's all well and good, and you can argue those things to appear good. The reality is there's no money in actually solving the problem that we have. Right now we're taking in $2.2 trillion. We're spending 3.7. And so, all of that's great. We really do need to look at how we get this thing done. 51% of the public right now don't pay any federal taxes. So we need something that's fair. We need something that's simple.
All right, this question is from the only female that sent us a question. You're going to have to work on your female demographics there.
I've got a wife and 3 daughters, so I should be armed for this one.
This is from Rebecca from Springdale, and it came via email. What's your take on the Iowa straw poll, particularly with Michelle Bachmann winning? Is she your candidate? If not, who do you support for president?
I really don't have a candidate right now. I know Michelle very well, having served with her in the House. And I thought it was kind of an interesting dynamic. I don't think that there was really any real surprises. Ron Paul, we felt like he would do good. Michelle would do good. Paulini maybe didn't do as well as some people thought, and as a result, has gone ahead and gotten out. So right now, I'm really in the situation to wait and see, and really, I think find out. We're hearing some rhetoric now. Really find out the direction that all of these individuals, where they want to move the country. Rick Perry getting in will make a difference. I think probably some of Michelle's base, will come to him. So again, it's just kind of an interesting time. It's an interesting time for guys like you that analyze all this stuff and get comment on it and ask a bunch of questions about it.
What are your thoughts on Rick Perry? Just since he's so fresh and new in the race, you must know him because he's the Texas governor. There's a lot of Arkansas people that support him. Already we've seen some GOP state legislators get out in front on that. Is Rick Perry your kind of Republican?
Well, I've met him on several occasions. I think that when you look at his record, he's done a good job of job creation and things like that. I think he matches up more on that we've got a spending problem versus a taxing problem. So I like those things about him, but again, we're going to know everything there is to know about him in the next month.
Yeah, apparently we've already got his college transcripts already, and he wasn't even in the race. So. All right, well, we'll watch that. This is from John from Carlisle. It came via email. In the last Iowa debate, all of the Republican presidential candidates said they would not accept a budget deal that would include tax increases, even if there were $10 in spending cuts to every $1 raised in revenue increases, tax increases. Would you support a 10-to-1 budget deal? If not, what ratio could you support?
I think right now the real concern among Republicans is when you look at historically, we've spent about 19% of the budget of the overall, all the goods and services produced in the United States. About 19% of that has been government. We're up to 25% now, the highest since World War II. And we all say we agree, that we can't continue to spend at that rate. Now, you got two choices. You can continue to spend at that rate and raise taxes, to cover that, or you can start reducing the spending dramatically. And so I'm a guy that feels like we need to reduce the spending dramatically and get back down towards that 19%. I'd very much like to be like the state of Arkansas, pass a balanced budget where we have to spend our means. But I'll tell you, as I'm out in Arkansas visiting with my constituents, the idea, they feel like they're paying plenty of taxes now. And so I'm very much in favor of reducing the spending.
Well, 10-to-1's a pretty good spending reduction there.
Well, I think what you'll see, though, is that not again, most economists, the economists I talk to, no one's in favor of not no one, but most economists are not in favor of raising taxes on anybody right now with this very, very weak economy. I do think that what you'll see is getting rid of some of these loopholes. It shouldn't be that a corporation like GE that's making billions of dollars, that they don't pay anything. So I think there'll be some work in that direction. But right now, we really do have to get serious with the spending.
Some of these questions get a little edgy here, so it's no different than what you'd see on a radio call-in program. I try to give them as directly as I can.
I'm used to edgy and not edgy, and
This one comes from Mike from Traskwood. This also came via email. Why did the Republicans and you give in on raising the debt ceiling? Doesn't this give President Obama a blank check?
Well, I think ultimately you had to raise the debt ceiling at some point. Right now, as I said, we're bringing in $2.2 trillion. We're spending 3.7. And so, the United States government, like myself and everybody else, I believe very strongly, you make commitments, you pay your bills. So, you had to do that at some point. I think the deal that we actually got was certainly not the best deal in the world, but I think it was the best deal that we could get under the circumstances. And so what would happen is, over a period of time, you'd have things like the poultry inspectors, in Arkansas. They wouldn't be able to go to the plant. That plant would shut down. All of those workers would go home without being paid. The corporation, that had invested all of that. You'd have situations where our disabled veterans, you name it, again, not receiving those checks. Now, those people are the last people in the world that got us in the mess that we're in. And so, again, I think we got the best deal that we could get under the circumstances, and then are going to work hard and fight to continue to reduce the spending. I was really pleased that we did get the vote, at least on the balanced budget amendment. I think that's a start, and we're just going to keep pounding away with that and get some form of a balanced budget. And there's lots of different ways to do that, so that we make the federal government, we make them be more like Arkansas and quit spending more than they have. These are simple truths. I mean, these are things that that you just have to do.
Well, why have a balanced budget amendment? I'm not opposed to that by any stretch, but Congress can propose a budget that is in balance. Why does that not happen?
Because of the nature of the beast. And you'll even have times in our history. Graham Rudman did a great job for a few years. You had divided Congress. Mm-hmm. They jumped in on that. The trouble is that we can't make laws now that are good for future Congresses. So every president, and this is true of President Bush, it's true of the president we have now, President Obama, or whoever, they all have their legacy things and this and that. The only way, and this is why almost all of our states throughout the union, which are a great experiment for how you do things, this is why they've gone to balanced budgets. You have to make people live within their means.
And I've heard this conversation a lot before, where the kind of the metaphor is we keep kicking the can down the road. To me, it seems like that this super committee that's been created is a little bit of that, kicking that can down the road. I mean, the really tough decisions on budget choices weren't really made. They're going to be made by this super committee in Congress. That seems to be disappointing from what I heard from a lot of politicians on both sides of the political aisle saying we want to solve this problem now.
Let me say one other thing in regard to the balanced budget amendment. If Congress were to pass a balanced budget amendment, that doesn't mean that it would go in effect. That just means it would go out to the states
for ratification.
Mm-hmm. And then they ultimately, the people's representatives throughout the states, they ultimately would make that decision. So it's not Congress, it's America that would make that choice. I just don't see any downside to that. In regard to what we've done, a couple things. It's not a committee. It's not a commission. It is a true committee of Congress, with great power, great authority. So unlike these other commissions, this thing, once it gets into place and going, like I say, they've got the authority to really do things. It's modeled after the BRAC Commission. Mm-hmm. And if you remember, when I was growing up, and you were growing up, we were under desk, worried about the Cold War and this and that. Now we're blessed. We've got so many fewer men in uniform and things like that. Well, we had to scale back the military. The trouble is everybody had a base, and that base, was a tremendous economic advantage to their community. So you had to get rid of them. Well, nobody wanted to get rid of their base, so we set up a BRAC commission. They would come up with ideas and try and look at it in in the sense of not having those constituencies come back, and then you had an up or down vote. This is how this is designed to do. Now the committees will have influence on this committee. I'm on the Ag Committee, so the Ag Committee will be meeting, and the commission is going to say, we'd like for you to get so many dollars. Where do you think those dollars ought to come from? Because you're on the committee, you're the ones that know best. So they'll meet, they'll report back, with their input, okay? And then the super committee will take all of that. At some point, we'll have a vote. And the good thing is that, well, I think it's good in the sense we can actually get something done in respect it'll only take 51 votes to actually pass the thing. So we'll have to see, as the process, goes. That's the way it's designed. Will it work? We'll have to wait and see. I think the people that have that they're putting on it are good people. I think everyone is committed to really solving the problem. It's interesting, once you get into this and you really understand the significance, this is why you have a guy like Dick Durbin, and Tom Coburn, who philosophically don't agree on much of anything, and yet, when it gets down to this, they do agree, voted for the thing coming out of the President's Commission because they understand that we've got to get this thing under control.
Isn't it a little bit, though, of sad commentary that it requires this once-in-a-lifetime super committee that you couldn't get enough senators and you couldn't get enough members of Congress to actually agree on a budget?
Well, I think it is, and yet, you did agree on a process. And the problem is right now we just have two groups that feel very strongly. I'm a guy that feels like, increased taxes, growing, more or less getting the level of government that we have now that's the highest since World War II, actually putting the taxing infrastructure behind that to leave that in place as opposed to lowering that back down. You've got the other clash of the other group that wants to increase the taxing, to increase the level of revenue to the point that it can support all this. And so those two groups are clashing, pretty significantly right now, but we've got to come to a conclusion. It's not, at this point, it's not about our children and grandchildren paying the bill. If we don't do something to start living within our means, we'll have a financial crisis not too long down the road. The other thing, though, is it's such a great opportunity, and you're a business guy. You understand this as well or better than I. But the United States is throughout the world is looked to as a leader in everything. If we'll get our financial house in order, then we have the opportunity to be stronger than ever. We'll become a greater magnet for investment, and things like that. So if we can get it done, like I say, we've got great opportunity.
All right, let's take another question. This may fold into some of what we're talking about here. Cliff Morgan via Facebook asked the question, why hasn't Congress brought the troops home yet? And I guess I might add to that parenthetically, do you see an end to the wars overseas?
No, I think so. It's so sad. I had in my old congressional district, in fact, I'll be going to a remembrance tomorrow. They'll actually be buried in Arlington. But in the helicopter crash that went down, we actually had two young guys that were from Green Forest and Siloam Springs, so within 40 or 50 miles of each other. So the good news is that we are doing that. In Iraq, right now we're standing on the sidelines, we're helping, give advice and things like that. But essentially, for the most part, we're out of Iraq. Afghanistan, we're scheduled to start these drawdowns and things where next October, to a large extent, we'll significantly reduce our troop involvement. So what we don't want to do is just leave in a situation, though, where leave a situation where you get back in where you have the potential for a failed state, to cause turmoil throughout the world. So that's the idea. I'm a guy, I think the one thing that we should have learned from Vietnam is you don't micromanage wars in Washington. And so I've looked to people like General Petraeus, people that I have great confidence in that have done a good job to give us advice in that area. Secretary Gates, when he was there. And now, we've got others that we'll look to for confidence and then rely on them to give us good information. The troops, the generals in command.
Let's move to a business question. This comes from Rob from Benton via Facebook, and we got some other variations of this question from a couple different places. Legislation was recently introduced in the Senate that would require online retailers to collect sales taxes on all purchases. Do you see yourself supporting this legislation or other legislation that addresses this sales tax collection issue? This has been around for a while.
It really has, and the situation that we're getting into now is that you've got the Main Street, and especially in the smaller communities. I know in the area, I'm living in Rogers now, I think the sales tax is about 9%, maybe 9.5%, but right in the 9% range. And so when you start out 9% behind, then you've got problems. The other thing is that I'm a guy that still looks for the phone book when I'm trying to, get
They make those still?
Yeah.
Okay.
My daughters, I've got 3 daughters, 25
They can Google
through.
it for you if you've
Well,
got daughters.
exactly. But everything they do is a part to me, and I'm getting better, okay? But everything they do is web-based. And so, when you look at the trajectory, online sales are heading just upwards as quickly as they can do. If you'd asked me this question 10 years ago, I'd say no. Leave the internet alone. Let them establish themselves and stuff. Right now, they're very much established, and so I don't think it's fair. And so, the bill that I would like to see, I don't really like the Durbin bill, and we'll be working with him. There's lots of other stuff. I think it's a states' rights issue. I think the states ought to be able to allow it. I think we this is a commerce issue, I believe. Mm-hmm. We need to make it such that the states can allow themselves to do that and then enforce it and then go from there. But I do think right now it's not a level playing field. And you look at rural America, it's very, very difficult right now with the economy that we've got. But when you have this tremendous inequity, it makes it that much harder.
So you see support in a federal bill that allows states to kind of determine how to deal with the problem?
Exactly.
Okay.
And I would encourage the states to deal with the problem because I think it is a huge,
Well, and in Arkansas they
have, and they should have the ability to do that.
This comes from Mark from Fort Smith. It also came via email. In a recent Southwest Times Record article, which I'm not familiar with, the article that it's referencing here, Congressman Womack admitted that he was wrong to vote against earmarks. You voted for earmarks in the past, but you've campaigned against them in the most recent election cycle. Where do you stand on earmarks today? Do you support them in some sort of appropriate use, or what's your position on earmarks today?
Well, what we've done is we've had an earmark moratorium for 2 years, and I supported that. Right now, I'm very much in favor of total disclosure, where everyone understands where dollars are going. The situation that we have right now, we've got to fix it. And I'm working with people like Senator Coburn, Senator DeMint, and Senator DeMint feels the same way in the sense that we have a system now. If I wanted, and I'm working very hard to do this, we need a 12-foot channel in the Arkansas River. Mm-hmm. That would allow us to load 40% more weight on those barges. They'd sink a little lower.
Right.
Without any increase in their fuel use or whatever, and make them much more efficient. That's a good thing, and we could do that for a few $1 million. We've spent billions and billions of dollars for the waterway, that the Arkansas River is part of. So it makes no sense to do that. Well, under the current system, the way it works, somebody has to ask for that money, and in the past it's been a congressman, or a senator. People in Little Rock can't call and say, "Will you do this?" It has to go through that. That's considered an earmark. Well, but it's not a teapot museum or anything like that. I was the ranking member on Water Resources that had control over all this. And I said, look, go back and pull the earliest bills, and all of them, have different things, allocated for different deals. Now, if you turn it over and say, well, Congress isn't going to do that anymore at all, then the administration is going to do that. Well, the administration is going to do it to the swing states, and it'll become totally politicized in that regard. So what we're trying to do now is figure out, how to do this thing. As far as the pork barrel spending, the teapot museums, the bridges to nowhere and all that stuff, again, those are wrong. We got to get rid of that. But we do need a system that functions. But don't misunderstand. Like I said, I'm against the earmark spending. The good news is, that's something that we've actually, we campaigned on that and we actually got it done.
At the same time, you're still I hear you advocating it needs to be discretionary, and that's always going to be in the eye of the beholder what's relevant and what's not relevant.
I agree. And I don't even know that, again, that's the system that we've got now. So you've got ports that aren't getting dredged. You'll have ports that are right in the middle because there's nobody to ask for that money, even though the Corps can say, hey, we need to do this, okay? So it might be that we do some other kind of structure it's just a problem that we've got to solve. So I'm not advocating necessarily that the individual congressmen do that. We've got some problems with the process worked out. But you're right. At the end of the day, somebody has to decide these things, and they do elect you to go up and be part of that process.
Well,
there's nothing wrong with that.
I was about to say there's another super committee in the making.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Let the committees of jurisdiction do their job, but it needs to be in a very, very open way. Let the appropriations bills have people plenty of time to understand what's in them, rather than these things that are brought to you at midnight and you're voting at 2 o'clock in the afternoon the next day. That's how you get rid of a lot of this stuff.
All right, this question's come to us in the course of our conversation. If tax cuts create jobs, what went wrong in the last 10 years? This actually comes from the Arkansas Times, I'm sure your favorite online publication.
Well, I think, when you look at the situation that throughout the last 10 years, we had a downturn as President Bush was coming in. We had the dot-com bubble burst. We switched into a situation then where we had 9/11. We set up Homeland Security. We started fighting 2 wars and all of those kind of things. And yet during that period, we actually did create a lot of jobs. And then we have a new situation arise with the housing crisis, and then we lose a bunch of jobs. Okay, it is such that I don't think any manufacturer, if you can bring me a group of, if you can get 100 manufacturers that we'd all consider trustworthy, take care of their employees, if you'd bring them to me and say you need to raise our taxes, and that's going to help us compete globally and create jobs, it just ain't going to happen. And the reason that we've got the humongous problem with jobs right now, we have lots of businesses sitting on the sidelines. In fact, I was at a meeting in Fort Smith. Governor Beebe got on to us about this. He was talking, myself was there, Senator Pryor, Congressman. He got on to us and said, look, we've got to have some stability, And the instability is coming from the fact that people don't know what their health care costs are going to be, businesses. They don't know what the regulations are going to be coming out of Washington, and they don't know what their taxes are going to be. We have this 2-year deal. We've got to get some stability where they know, what the rules are going to be so that they can play with it down in the future.
All right. Senator Boozman has been our guest for this last half hour for our Talk Politics question and answer session. Senator, thank you so much for your time. Very much appreciated.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I do appreciate your show.
All right. And we appreciate you sending your questions to us. I'm Roby Brock. Until next time, take care.